Flamingo, lesson number 6, that is Poets and Pancakes. And this is the second passage and the fifth, seventh or eighth, ninth line, I suppose. So now we were discussing about communism. Now communism, as I was telling you yesterday also, communist is a person, who feels like giving, creating violence in the society. They want that people should follow a particular community, and they create tension, they create violence among the people and in the society. And these people, the Gemini Studios people, they were all against communism. They were not in favor of communism. Fine. So now what is the definition of a communist that is given here? A communist was a godless man and he had no filial or conjugal love. Yesterday also I was telling you, I have told you, the communist was a godless man, means he does not have any faith in God. Fine. And he had no filial or conjugal love. Filial means the love between the parents and the kids, and conjugal love means the love between the husband and the wife. So now he was such a person, means he does not have any faith in God, he does not have any affection towards his kids, he does not have any affection towards his wife and towards his parents also. Fine. And he had no compunction about killing his own parents or his children. Compunction, as I told you yesterday also, compunction means like if in any circumstance he had to kill his parents or his children also, na, in that condition also that person will not feel guilty that he has committed a sin. So he is such a disheartened, he is a person heartless, so who is does not have love and affection for his own kids, for his own family. So obviously we cannot expect any kind of love from his side for the society also. And no, he was always out to cause and spread unrest and violence among innocent and ignorant people. And his task is to create violence in the society, to create vandalism in the society, means like destroying the infrastructure in the society, and then using bad language also, and then hitting the people also. In this manner, he loves creating terror among the minds of the people. And such notions means the ideas, such notions which prevailed everywhere else in South India at that time also naturally floated about vaguely. Vaguely means not clearly. Among the khadi clad means khadi dressed, the poets who used to wear khadi. So khadi clad poets of Gemini Studio. Now see, this thought means the thought of communism. It was coming out in the among the people in South India, and slowly what happened, it started entering into the minds of the poets of the Gemini Studios, those who were wearing khadi. And now evidence of it was soon forthcoming. Now its evidence was soon forthcoming, means it was seen in future also. Slowly and slowly they were able to see its evidence, its proof also. Now onwards we are going to study like who are the people, or like what sort of people they used to come to the Gemini Studio. Gemini Studio was a remarkable place. It has great respect also. So now like some people, some outsiders also, they were welcomed in the Gemini Studio. So like who were the guests? Now we are going to study that. We have studied the department. First is the makeup department, second we have studied the that is the story department. Now we'll study the guests who came to Gemini Studio, the important ones. When Frank Buchman's moral rearmament army, some 200 strong, visited Madras sometime in 1952, they could not have found a warmer host in India than the Gemini Studios. Now see, as I've told you, that Gemini Studio, its owner, its founder was this person SS Vasan. Fine. So like this SS Vasan was a generous person. He also loved that people should come to his place, and moreover he was very famous in hospitality. Hospitality means serving people, helping people, providing them good food, good meal also when they are coming to Madras. So in the same manner, there was a group of 200 people of the Moral Rearmament Army, MRA, Moral Rearmament Army, and that was headed by Frank Buchman. Frank Buchman was its head or the leader. So this Frank Rearmament Army, and in this army, how many people were there? 200 people. They came to this Gemini Studios. Fine. And you must remember also, students, like how many people were there in the Gemini Studio? In the Gemini Studio, as like for example the people in the story department, makeup department, office boys, and so many other helping hands also, clerks also. So total number of people were 600 all in the Gemini Studios, and then 200 more also joined That too for a short duration of time, no doubt, but 200 people from the rearmament, moral rearmament army headed by Frank Buchman, they also came to this place. Why so? Because Gemini Studio was known for its great hospitality. And so, and someone called the group an international circus. Now see, there were many people from different nationalities in this MRA, that is Moral Rearmament Army. So now someone from the Gemini Studio called this group as an international circus. They were not very good on the trapeze, and the acquaintance with animals was only at the dinner table. Trapeze, it's an instrument, musical instrument, trapezium. It has two sticks are there, and then it has some rings also. So some beautiful voice comes out from it, and this is a musical instrument. So now these people, the moral rearmament army, they were not so very good in playing trapeze, and they did not have much knowledge of the animals. Only they know on the dinner table means like in food they know like the animals, otherwise they don't. And so now what happened, but they presented two plays in a most professional manner. Now the important thing that you have to remember about these people is that 200 people from the MRA headed by Frank Buchman, they came to Gemini Studio, and the important thing they did here is they presented two plays in this place. Presented two plays, and the plays were one is Jotham Valley and the second one is The Forgotten Factor. These two things that you have to remember. So now their Jotham Valley and The Forgotten Factor ran several shows in Madras, and along with the other citizens of the city, the Gemini people of Gemini family of 600 saw the plays over and over again. The message of the plays were usually plain and simple homilies, but the sets and costumes were first rate. Now these people, like 200 people from the this MRA, Moral Rearmament Army, they staged two plays in the Gemini Studios, and the name of the plays are, first is Jotham Valley and the second one is The Forgotten Factor, and these two plays were staged here, and the message of the plays were usually simple and plain homilies. Now see, what is the message that is given through these plays? These two plays, they were based upon the moral values, religious teachings, so that the society should be upgraded in a very good manner. So this was the message from these two plays, and the sets and costumes were first rate. But see, they had the sets and the costumes, they were a first rate, means they were so very nice, fantastic, that the people they used to enjoy, means the dress up was fantastic, it was remarkable. And the costumes and the set also, the way they decorated this set, that is the stage, that was also fantastic. And so, and the Tamil drama, Madras and the Tamil drama community were terribly impressed. And for some years, almost all Tamil plays had a scene of sunrise and sunset in the manner of Jotham Valley, with a bare stage, a white background curtain, and a tune played on the flute. Now, for example, you might have definitely seen on in the movies also. Like, for example, when the sunrise is to be shown in the movie, in a movie, so how it is presented, like there is a clear screen is there, fine, and the sun is coming out, a light is shown that is reflecting, and it is coming out on the screen, and slowly the the sound effects, by the help of the sound effects, the the idea, the aura of the morning is created, like the chirping of the birds is there, and the sunrise, the sun is also coming slowly and slowly on the screen. So this was the idea that was first initiated by these people of the MRA, that is Moral Rearmament Army, right? So now see, the people are like the Gemini Studio people, they were also impressed by this presence, by this way of presenting the sunrise and the sunset from the side of the people of MRA. So they also started using it in their movies. So now for some years, almost all Tamil plays had a scene of sunrise and sunset in the manner of the Jotham Valley, with a bare stage, empty stage, and a white background. The clear picture is there. There is a white screen on the stage, curtain, and a tune played on the flute. As you all know, like the flute is there, is the musical instrument. So the tune that is played on the flute, that is also that is also supporting the environment of the early morning, that is dawn. So in this manner, these people, they presented the morning scene, that is the sunrise, and this was later on imitated by the Gemini Studios people also in their film. It was some years later that I learned that the MRA was a kind of counter movement to international communism. Underline this line, it's very, very important. Now you must understand like what is the meaning of MRA, Moral Rearmament Army. Now for an easy definition, you can look into this line. It was a kind of counter movement to international communism. Counter movement means it was an opposite to movement, or it was in contrast to the international communism. Means these people were against communism. As I've told you already, communist and communism, both the things I have just discussed with you. So this is like the it is anti communism, right? And so, and the big bosses of Madras like Mr. Vasan simply played into their hands. Simply played into their hands means they were just like the puppets into the hands of such people. And so big bosses here refers to SS Vasan, who was the founder of Gemini Studio. So the big bosses of Madras like Mr. SS Vasan, the founder of Gemini Studio, simply played into their hands means they were just like the puppets. I'm not sure, however, that this was indeed the case, for the unchangeable aspects of these big bosses and their enterprises remained the same, MRA or no MRA. Now see, like these big bosses means people like SS Vasan and many more. So now for these people, they have a fixed strategy, whether it should be like it should be like a MRA or no MRA. Means they should support communism or they should be anti-communist. There is a difference, you know. And they these types of people were there in the Gemini Studio also. And so MRA or no MRA, that is international communism or no international communism. The staff of Gemini Studio had a nice time hosting 200 people of all hues. Hue means colors, hues and sizes of at least 20 nationalities. As I've told you in the beginning also, like 200 people of this group, that is MRA, they came to the Gemini Studio. They staged two plays also, Jotham Valley and The Forgotten Factor. And so it was a nice time also. And these were the people from different nationalities also, different colors, different sizes. Obviously it is not possible that they can be the same to same copy of each other. So they were like different colors were there, different sizes also, and different nationalities also. So that is why someone from the Gemini Studio commented that it was an international circus also. It was such a change from the usual collection of crowd players waiting to be slapped with thick layers of makeup by the office boy in the makeup department. Now see what is the regular routine in the Gemini Studio. In the morning, like the people, those who are playing some role in the Gemini, in any of the movie, now they used to sit in a line or stand in a line in order to be like in order that the pores on their faces should be covered with the heavy makeup. So the crowd is to be, you know, given the makeup, and the same manner actors, actresses, they all are to be done in the same manner. So now this regular routine was stopped for some days because the MRA, these people were there in the Gemini Studio. So all the people, they were busy in providing the good hospitality to all these people. So now there was another guest. So this was the first group there that came to Gemini Studio. Now there was another guest also who came to this place. And this story that I'm going to start from here, it's very, very, very important. The entry of Stephen Spender. And from here, it is related to the end of the lesson. So I want everybody's attention here. Now, a few months later, the telephone lines of the big bosses of Madras buzzed. And once again, we at the Gemini Studios cleared a whole shooting stage to welcome another visitor. So now see what I mean. All of a sudden, like the founder, SS Vasan, he received a telephone that some another host is also arriving to this place. So that is why like the guest is coming, obviously. And this is also a place where the scenes are shot. So that is why they always believe that the person who will be coming, obviously, that person is going to address the audience. So that is why the whole stage was cleared for the person to come on the stage and address, or if they want to present a scene or create something, then they should be given a space so that they can show their creativity. So all they said was that he was a poet from England. Now the people, the common people in the Gemini Studio, they simply got this much information only, that the person who will be coming as a guest is a poet at that time, is a poet from England. Now the only poets from England the simple Gemini staff knew or heard of were Wordsworth and Tennyson. The more literate ones knew of Keats, Shelley, and Byron, and one or two might have faintly come to know of someone by the name Eliot. Now, when these people, they were given the information that a poet from England is coming, so some of the people, those who have the knowledge of literature, they thought that maybe the person is Wordsworth. Wordsworth is a famous poet, as you all know, William Wordsworth. And there is Tennyson. So some people, they thought that it is Alfred Tennyson. And then some thought that it could be like Keats also. Some thought it is the person is P.B. Shelley, Percy by Shelley. Some thought that the person, maybe the poet, is a Byron. And some more literate, they thought that the person could be Eliot. So there were different thoughts and ideas coming into the minds of the people. They were simply guessing, because they were not given any particular idea that this is the person coming. So now see what happened. Who was the poet visiting the Gemini studios now? So now it was like they were simply guessing. So they were not sure like who was the person coming as a guest in the Gemini studios now. He's not a poet, he's an editor. That is why the boss is giving him a big reception. Vasan was also the editor of the popular weekly, Tamil weekly Ananda Vikatan. Underline this statement, Ananda Vikatan. Like S.S. Vasan, first thing you must remember, S.S. Vasan was the founder of the Gemini studio, that is the film industry in Madras. And the second important thing is that S.S. Vasan, he was also the editor of a newspaper, of a Tamil weekly, not the newspaper, of a Tamil weekly. And the name of the weekly magazine is Ananda Vikatan, right? And so now these people, they were also given the information that the poet who is coming in the Gemini studio is not a poet. Later on, they were given the information that the person is not a poet, but is an editor. And that is why the boss is giving him a big reception. So the boss here means S.S. Vasan. And as you know, like the people who are in the same profession, they they have to mutually collaborate with each other. Many a times they have to discuss, share ideas, and they keep on meeting also in different workshops and seminars and webinars also these days, right? So now see, he is an editor. So the person, keep in mind, the person, the guest who will be coming into the Gemini studio, he's also an editor. And S.S. Vasan, the founder of the Gemini studio, he is also an editor of this weekly magazine, that is Ananda Vikatan. This means he's himself is an editor, so obviously he is supposed to give a good welcome, a warm welcome to another editor who will be coming as a guest in his studio. So now he wasn't the editor of any known names of British publications in Madras, and that is those known at the Gemini studio. For example, we know the names of some of the other magazines. In the same manner, during those days, the people in the Gemini studio, they knew the names of a few, British publications in Madras. And that is, they knew. And since the top men of the Hindu were taking the initiative, the surmise was that the poet was the editor of a daily. Now, what happened? The people, they were thinking like they knew the British publications, some of the British publications name they knew. So they were thinking like it could be this name, it could be that name also, but they were not able to locate the fixed name, like this is the name, because they were not getting the exact information. And since the top men of the Hindu was a famous newspaper of those times, so they were taking the initiative. The surmise means the guess. Those people, they were also thinking. So the surmise was that the poet was the editor of a daily, but not from the Manchester Guardian or the London Times. Now these were the famous British periodicals, the Manchester Times and the London Times. The Manchester Guardian and the London Times, these were the famous British publications. And these were the names, they were very common, and they were heard by the people in the Gemini studios. So they were thinking like it could be possible that the person who is coming as a guest is an editor. So it could be possible that he is an editor in either of these two British publications, that is the Manchester Guardian, or it could be the London Times. So they were simply guessing. That was all that even the most well informed among us knew. So like for example, those who are the very close to the boss also, they were the super duper very close people, they also had this much information. Means like nobody in the Gemini studio had the exact information like who is the guest coming in this studios. At last, around 4 in the afternoon, the poet or the editor arrived, and he was a tall man, very English, very serious, and of course, very unknown to all of us. Obviously, he was a person who came from England, so nobody has seen the person. Obviously, the way he was speaking English and his pronunciation accent was totally different, and he was very serious also. The way he was behaving, it seems the person is very much responsible, and obviously very unknown means the people, they were not aware of like who is the person. Still, the person was there in front of them, but even then they don't know the name of the person. Battling with half a dozen pedestal fans on the shooting stage, the boss read out a long speech. Now the boss, SS Vasan, he moved onto the stage and he started reading a long speech. Now see, on the stage there were the pedestal fans, that is the standing fans were there on both the sides of the stage, and from there the wind was coming, the air was coming. So now as he was holding a paper, he was reading out the speech to the audience. He had to battle, he was not able to take hold of the papers very properly, so he was battling simply, and then he gave the speech. It was obvious, very clear, that he too knew precious little about the poet or the editor. Now when SS Vasan, the founder, he was giving a speech in praise of the guest who arrived in the Gemini studio, and in the speech also it was very clear that he also was not having much information about the guest. The speech was all in the most general terms, but here and there it was peppered with the words like freedom and democracy. Now, the speech was in a general manner, normal manner, and sometimes it was peppered, means there was the sprinkling of these two words also, that is freedom and democracy, which were heard, and these were the words that were understood and heard by some of the people. Then the poet spoke. So now here poet refers to the guest who came to the Gemini studio. He couldn't have addressed a more dazed and silent audience, and no one knew what he was talking about, and his accent defeated any attempt to understand what he was saying. And so now the guest, he started speaking, and when he was addressing to the audience, he was also able, for example, like when a teacher teaches in the class, the teacher is able to understand like the whether the students are able to understand from their appearance, from their expression, the teacher is able to understand like these students are able to understand or not. So in the same manner, as this poet, he was delivering the speech, so now what happened, he was able to understand that the audience is a little bit dazed means confused, and silently listening. They were not able to take out the gist, like what the person is speaking. So no one knew, and no one was able to understand what he was speaking, first thing. And second thing, the way he was giving the pronunciation, his accent was totally different from that of the people, those who were listening. So that is why whether they were trying, they were making the efforts to understand what the person was saying, but they could not. Why? Because of his accent. So nothing was possible for them to understand. The whole thing lasted about an hour, and then the poet left and we all dispersed in utter bafflement. Bafflement means confusion. Now see, this person, he completed his speech and he took about around an hour, and like when he left the stage, all the people in the Gemini studio, they were in utter bafflement, confusion. They were not able to understand like what the person wanted to say through his speech. What are we doing? What is an English poet doing in a film studio which makes Tamil films for the simplest sort of people? Now the common folk of this Gemini studio, they started discussing among themselves like why this person was called, why this person came to this place, what he was doing among the group of the people who are very simple, who are making films for the simple folk, that is the Tamil films. So like they were not able to understand anything. People whose lives at least afforded them the possibility of cultivating a taste for English poetry. And see, these were the common people. They simply knew their own language, Tamil language. They were making the films in Tamil language. So this is all they know. And they were not able to afford, they could not afford to understand that is the English poetry, because simple people, they knew their own language, mother tongue only. They were not bothered to go much higher to learn English poetry and all that. Now the poet looked pretty baffled too. Now it's not that the audience was in bafflement, in confusion, but the poet himself, the guest himself, was in utter bafflement, because he was also able to understand that the audience is not able to, connect with him, like what he was saying. And so, for he too must have felt. For in literature, many times I have told you in class also, for means because in literature. For he too must have felt the sheer incongruity of his talk. Underline this statement, it is very important, which I am going to give you the explanation. So now, the line is, the poet looked pretty baffled too, for he too must have felt the sheer incongruity. Incongruity means not in sync, or you can say absurd, something that is absurd. Fine. So now, the poet must have felt the sheer incongruity, that is absurdity, of his talk about the thrills and travails of an English poet. Now, thrills, obviously, thrilling means something that is exciting, and travails means something that is unpleasant experiences. So once again, I'm giving the explanation of the complete line. The poet was also a little bit confused, because he must have felt the sheer incongruity of his talk about the thrill and excitement of an English poet. Now, this person, when he was sharing the excitement and the unpleasant experiences that he faced in his life, and moreover, as an English poet, when he was sharing with the common audience, they were not they were not able to understand. So that is why for them it was an absurd speech, because they cannot connect, they cannot relate. So his visit remain an unexplained mystery. So that is why he's coming to the Gemini studio. And this is a question also, like in the textual questions, you can see, like, this is a very important question, like why the coming of this guest to the Gemini studio was an unexplained mystery. It was a mystery because the people, they could not understand the purpose of coming of this English poet to the Gemini studio, because they were the simple Tamil people making the simple movies for the Tamil folk. And moreover, they had no interest in English poetries also. And when they tried to understand the speech also of this person, they were not able to understand. Why so? Because of his accent also. So that is why it was an unexplained mystery. This is a very important question related to this lesson. Underline the statement. Now, the great prose writers of the world may not admit it, but my conviction grows stronger day after day that prose writing is not and cannot be the true pursuit of a genius. This is a super duper important part of the story, which I'm going to start from here. So I want everybody's concentration. Now, prose and poetry, you know the difference. Poetry is simple, the poetical lines are there, you have read n number of poems, and prose means a detailed story is there. Fine. And with the, like in the poetries, there are the use of the literary devices also, and there's the rhythm and the rhyming also, that is what makes it musical. But in prose, it is not musical, it is written in the simple manner. So now see, the great prose writers of the world may not admit means they may not accept. The prose writers means the story writers, find the long story writers, novels and all those writers, they cannot accept the fact. Now what? But my conviction means the idea or the belief grows stronger day by day after prose, that prose writing is not and cannot be the true pursuit of a genius. Pursuit means pursue, to follow. And see, he says that I believe that there could be many other prose writers who believe that prose writing is not an easy thing, and it is not possible for any genius to pursue. It is not possible, like any person can write a story, it needs like patience. When you are writing a long story, you have to have patience, because continuously you are writing a long story, so you must have patience. It is for the patient, persistence, persevering judge with a heart so shrunken that nothing can break it. Now, what are the qualities of a person who wants to be a prose writer or who wants to write long reading novels? The person should be patient, fine. He should be cool person, and persistent means he has to be after the thing. Persistent, he has to write, and persevering. Persevering means like following some goal, but the person must have patience also, because when we are doing something, like the will be followed by, or will have to have in our path, the obstacles will be there, but it's not that will stop our journey. We have to shun down, we have to kick all those obstacles away from our path, and we have to continue so that we can reach to our destination. So it is for the persevering that drudge. Drudge means a person who is doing the long, boring task. Fine. So it is for a person who is very serious doing the long, boring task with a heart so shrunken that nothing can break it. And he has the heart which is already shrink, and so no, nothing. If anybody would do any harm to the person, then the person is not at all going to break. Means that you're you should have faith that should be so high. If anybody tries to pull your leg, then you should not be affected. Instead, you should pass it with a beautiful smile, so that the person's aim of causing hurt to your heart should not be successful, right? So that is what happens. So his heart cannot be broken, and rejection slips don't mean a thing to him. And if somebody rejects him, in his career na, he applied in all India radio also, and that time he was rejected. Why? Because it was said that his voice is a little bit hoarse, it is croaky, so that is why he was not given the job. And now we can see like totally change in the society. The people are, the people love his voice, the way he welcome the audience in Kaun Banega Pati. Everybody loves listening to his voice. Fine. So, and in many of the movies he has sing the songs also in a beautiful voice. So that is why it does not mean that if one person has rejected, it does not mean that you do not have any worth of yourself. You should keep on proving yourself, and there is no need to prove also, I would say. You should continue doing your task in a better way, so that nobody should have the courage to say that what you are doing. So you keep on doing, have self faith. This is the best thing. So now the thing is that rejection slips does not mean anything to him. So he at once sets about making a fresh copy of the long prose piece and sends it to another editor, enclosing postage for the return of the manuscript. For example, so many people, they write stories for publishing in the newspapers, na? And when they send it to the newspaper, many times these stories are rejected and they are sent to the person. Fine. And for that, the person who is sending the story, he is supposed to send an envelope with a self-attested stamp also and his address. So like we should not feel in the same manner. The author says that we should not feel bad like somebody has rejected, somebody does not like the story. Like for example, Chetan Bhagat, when he started, when he wrote his novel mid summer, sorry, one night at the call center, when he was moving to the publisher, they rejected in the beginning. They said that it does not have any good content, the readers will not be there. And later on, what happened when like one reader, the person started reading, more and more people started getting information, and so we can say now the person has become. So it does not mean that if one or the two people are against you, that does not mean that the whole society. Keep on proving, keep on doing. So in the same manner, the person is sending the enclosing postage also for the return to himself. It was for such people that the Hindu, now this is the important part, it was for such people that the Hindu, as I told you, it was the famous newspaper, had published a tiny announcement in an insignificant corner of an unimportant page. Underline this statement: a tiny announcement in an insignificant corner of an unimportant page. Now, as I have told you that there is a newspaper, the Hindu, right? And now, as you know, for example, let me tell you about Dainik Bhaskar, the first pages of main newspapers, like the leading stories of our country, that are printed on the first and then the second, third, and then on the fifth and sixth pages, they are the information, they are the news material that are not of so much of relevance, right? So in the same manner, in this newspaper, The Hindu, like there was an announcement that was published in an insignificant corner, means in that corner of the newspaper, which was not so much important, which does not, which is not all the people, maximum people, it's not given importance also. Fine. Insignificant corner and unimportant page, and the page is also not so very important, as I've told you, like the fifth and sixth page, it's not so very important, so that is why it was on the unimportant page and insignificant corner. And what was the information? Now the important point is insignificant corner, unimportant page. There was a news material that was published. And what was that? That there was a short story contest organized by a British periodical by the name The Encounter. Now on that page, in the that particular small corner, there was an information that a short story contest is, started by the name of the British periodical, and the name of the British periodical is The Encounter. As you can see, it is written. So this is the name of the British periodical, right? Once again, the British periodical, that is the name is The Encounter, has published news related to a short story contest, and that was printed in an insignificant corner, unimportant page of the newspaper The Hindu, right? And so, of course, the encounter wasn't a known commodity among the Gemini literati. Literati means the people, those who have the knowledge of the literature. Fine. So now see here, the people in the Gemini studio, they did not have the information about this newspaper, British periodical, that is The Encounter. I wanted to get an idea of the periodical before I spent a considerable sum in postage sending a manuscript to England. Now, manuscript here refers to the story that he would like to write in for that story competition, right? So now see what happened. He wanted to have the information, like he was interested to participate in the story competition. But before writing the story, sending it to this British periodical, he wanted to have the information like whether this British periodical, that is The Encounter, is of some worth or not. So now in those days, the British Council Library had an entrance with no long-winded signboards and notices to make you feel you were sneaking into a forbidden area. As we are running short of time, so I will give you the complete explanation reading the whole passage, right? And we'll discuss later on also. And there were copies of The Encounter lying about in various degrees of freshness, almost untouched by the readers. When I read the editor's name, I heard a bell ringing in my shrunken heart. It was the poet. It was the poet who had visited the Gemini studios, and I felt like I had found a long lost brother, and I sang as I sealed the envelope and wrote out the address. Now see what happened. He for getting the information about this British periodical, that is The Hindu, he entered into the British Council Library, that is reserved for few people, for fixed people. So he entered in a secretive manner. He entered into the library, and he was surprised to see that there were the piles of this this British encounter, The Encounter, this British periodical. There was the heap of this this British periodical in that library, and it was the fresh copies also, means like it was untouched. The people did not touch, did not read, because as I've told you that the people were not so fluent in English, though they did not have so much of knowledge of reading and writing English. Speaking was also not at all so much common in those days. So now when he opened the page and he read the editor's name, it was a surprise. His start in his heart, they started ringing number of bells also, because the name of the editor in that British periodical was Stephen Spender. So it was the poet who had visited the Gemini studio, and he felt that he had met a long lost brother. For example, in Hindi movies, there is the like it is shown like the two brothers who have lost, who are lost in the Kumbh Mela and so on, and they later on meet after many years when they grow up. In the same manner, the poet has the affection for this person who came to the Gemini studio, and his name was written. So now immediately what he did, he realized that obviously the person was the unknown one, because he had seen the person, Stephen Spender, who came to the Gemini studio as a guest. So immediately he wrote the story, and he kept it in an envelope and wrote the address and sent it. And now I felt that he too would be singing the same song at the same time. Long lost brothers of Indian films discover each other by singing the same song in the first reel. And in the final reel of the film, Stephen Spender, Stephen, that was his name. Now he read out the name, and he was so happy that they're right. He was the same person who came to the Gemini studio. Now see, like after many years, when he left the Gemini studio, what happened? Years later, when I was out of the Gemini studios and I had much time, not much money, anything at a reduced price attracted my attention. On the footpath in the front of the Madras Mount Road post office, there was a pile of brand new books. There was a pile of brand new books for 50 paisa each. Actually, they were the copies of the same book, an elegant paper book of the American origin, special low-priced student edition in connection with the 50th anniversary of the Russian Revolution. I'd paid 50 paisa and picked up a copy of the book, The God That Failed. Super duper important part. I'm giving the explanation. So I want the concentration, and you people are concentrating. I know that very good. Now see what happened when the author, he left the Gemini studio. So later on what happened, like he did not have much money, but he had interest in the books also. So he wanted to purchase something that is of low cost. So one day while walking on the roadside, he got the attention, and he saw by the side that there was a person, and he was like with a pile of the books. And what was there? They were the reduced price books were there. So that caught the attention of the author, this Ashoka Mitran, or the author. And he found that there was a pile of the brand new books, and that were of 50 paisa each. Means in those days, as you all know, you may have heard also paisa was there. So 50 paisa each. And it was the elegant paper book of the American origin, special low priced student edition. And it was like especially for the students. So that is why it was low priced also. And why so? Because of the 50th anniversary of the Russian Revolution. He paid 50 paisa and he took the book. And the name of the book was The God That Failed. Underline this statement, underline the name of this book. It's very, very important related to this short question or a long question may come. So just focus. The God That Failed is the name. So six eminent men of letters. Now letters means highly educated people. Six eminent. Eminent means a highly renowned people. They have written the essays in this book, The God That Failed. I want to make myself clear once again. The God That Failed. Now what is the content? In this book, six eminent writers, very famous, well-known writers, they have written the essays, and that is compiled in this book, right? And what they have written, on which topic they have written the essays? They have written their journey into communism and their disillusionment. Disillusion means a dissatisfaction. They wanted to know more about communism, fine, but when they were disheartened, they found that it is not worthy. So that is why they returned, they came out, and they do not want to continue their journey into this communism. So now six eminent men of letters in six separate essays describe their journey into communism and their disillusioned return. And what are the names of the writers? Andre Gide, Richard Wright, Ignacio Salon, Arthur Koelster, Louis Fisher. Louis Fisher, as you have already read the lesson Indigo. So Louis Fisher is the writer of the lesson Indigo. And here also, he has also written an essay in the book, The God That Failed. Stephen Spender, and the last name that the author read was Stephen Spender. So once again, he was surprised, and though he was happy also that again and again, he is getting the chance, again and again, he is getting the chance to read something or the other about the person, Stephen Spender, who came as a guest, who came as a guest in the Gemini studio. So he was very, very happy. Now, suddenly the book assured tremendous. I'm going to end this lesson. So now suddenly the book assumed tremendous significance. Now, the book became much more important to the author. Why? Because the name of this author, Stephen Spender, is there. For example, if we read any book and name of our relative, as in here, let me tell you one example, like Tanmay and Siddharth, they both have written a book. So that we also feel happy when we get that copy in our hands, because we know these students. In the same manner, someone who is in relation is writing a book, and all of a sudden we finds a copy, so we are happy. So in the same manner, he was also happy. So Stephen Spender, the poet who had visited Gemini studio, and once again he was so very happy, like this is the person who came to the Gemini studios. In a moment, I felt a dark chamber of my mind lit with a hazy illumination. Earlier, as I told you now, like the coming of this guest was a mystery among the minds of the Gemini studio. So slowly and slowly, that dark chamber of his mind, now it was illuminated with many lights. Why so? Because now he was getting more and more information about this person, Stephen Spender. First information is that he was the editor of the British periodical, that is The Encounter, that I have just told you. Second thing is that he has written an essay also for the book, that is God That Failed. So this means the person was an eminent writer, right? So that is why now he was surprised, and now he's not no longer surprised. He was happy that the SS Vasan has called a person who was much more knowledgeable, but these people were not able to understand because they did not have the knowledge. And so the reaction to Stephen Spender at Gemini Studios was no longer a mystery, right? I've given you the explanation. So it was no longer a mystery because now he understood the purpose of the visit of this person coming to this place in the Gemini studio, and he also knew the person also. The boss of the Gemini studio, once again, the boss is SS Vasan. The boss of the Gemini studio may not have much to do with this Pender's poetry, but not with his God that failed. So the boss, he called this person, that is Stephen Spender, to the Gemini studio. Like the boss was not having much interest in the poetries of this person, but he was interested that the person is the editor, first thing, and he has written so many books. That means the person is a famous, well-renowned person. So that is why he was called, but not with his God that failed. But see, the purpose of his visit now was understood. So once again, I'm reading, the boss of the Gemini studio may not have much to do with the Spender's poetry. He was not interested in his poetries, but not with his God that failed. But he is not, disappointed. He is not disappointed with his God that failed. God here refers to the Stephen Spender, who has written an essay about communism, and that failed, means he was disheartened. So but not with his God. He was not unhappy with his God, that is Stephen Spender, who was failed into his journey into communism. So we have reached to the end of this lesson. The most important questions are, you can take question number 2 and 3 textual questions. Why was Kothil Mangalam Subbu? I have told many a times also by giving the explanation. And second is, how does the author describe the incongruity of an English poet addressing the audience? And okay, these two questions are important. Now